All right, welcome back to another episode of the Agendas podcast. We got a longer episode here today with all the NBA news that's going on. I'm here with Ben. Ben, what's going on?
How we doing?
Doing good, doing good. A lot of stuff to get into. Some free agent signings, some trades, some rumors, things like that. But I think a good place to start is probably the oldest news at this point is the Dejonte Murray trade. If you haven't heard, he has been traded from the Hawks to the Pelicans, and in return, the Hawks got two first-round picks. One is the Lakers this year, and then there's one in 2 years from now, and then they got Dyson Daniels as well. Some people rumor, when they heard that, Dejounte was rumored to the Pelicans, they thought Brandon Ingram just kind of like a straight up 1-for-1 swap, keep it simple, or maybe throw in Herb Jones. But I don't think the Pelicans were ever willing to give up Herb Jones. And after this trade, I don't think the Hawks really wanted Ingram. I don't think it's a situation where they requested Ingram from the Pelicans and the Pelicans like declined. I think the Hawks are more interested in this future facing package with getting some of those picks back that you gave up for Dejounte, getting a young player, someone who can play defense. That's been one of the Hawks' big struggles, as Ben's going to get into in a second. Is one of their main struggles is perimeter defense. So to add another perimeter defender in Dyson Daniels, along with Ricochet, who they drafted, who can help them with defense, hopefully a jump from Kobe Buffkin, and kind of surround Trae Young with some long defensive players, similar to what the Mavs did with Luka. I think that's what helped them kind of get to that next level, is surrounding Luka with a team that makes sense for him, and then going to add that star in Kyrie, and then it kind of all came together. And they made another move of their own, getting Klay Thompson. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Ben, what was your initial reaction, or what are your thoughts today, probably a few days after this Dejounte Murray trade?
Yeah, I give I give the trade an A+. That's my grade on this trade. We kind of thought Dejounte's value was two first-round picks. They got the two first-round picks. One of them with upside with the Lakers pick this year. And then on top of that, they get Dyson Daniels, 6'7" perimeter defender, like potentially all NBA type defender. He can't shoot, so that's a problem. But that's the type of defender you need next to Trae Young. And like you said, this roster's kind of coming together now where the Hawks they went away from this for a while, and they're getting back to getting basketball-sized basketball players where their players are the size they're supposed to be. Everyone's a two-way player, and everyone so they're playing defense on one end. On the other end of the floor, they're doing what Quinn wants in terms of 0.5 and just keeping the ball moving. They traded A.J. Griffin as well because he didn't fit that offensive mold or the defensive mold. So I think you kind of start to see the vision, young players, two-way players around Trae Young, and I'm looking forward.
Yeah, I think it's a good point what you just mentioned in terms of the vision. That's all you can ask for. If you're a Hawks fan, is have a direction. We talked about before this offseason that the Hawks would be kind of forced to pick a direction due to them getting the number one overall pick. They're going to have to choose between Trae and Dejounte. So this, you're kind of seeing the vision of where they want this team to be. Now the big question is, can they get Trae to buy in long term, even if it's a year or two where they're not as good as they want to be, just to buy in for the future to potentially be what the Mavs are today, a real legitimate finals contender. Just to throw in, by the way, they also got Larry Nance, who, isn't the biggest name in the world, solid role player, probably, on expiring contract, probably a player that if they're not contending for a playoff spot by the trade deadline, he'll be a player that if they'll look to move, and, a contending team could use him, an athletic guy, getting a little bit older, but just, another solid piece, solid rotation player from the Hawks, to get in this package. And again, if they're struggling at the trade deadline, could they get a couple second round picks for him or something like that? We'll see. So that's another interesting factor. And then for the Pelican side, I really like it from both sides, honestly. Like I saw a lot of stuff on social media that the Hawks got fleeced. I don't understand that narrative. I think it's coming from people who haven't watched Dejounte Murray recently, and they have this memory of him from the Spurs, that he's some great defender and great point guard. He hasn't defended in 2 years with the Hawks, man. Is that right? Has Dejounte Murray played defense since he has been an Atlanta Hawk?
No.
Yeah, so there's this narrative, and Ben's watching consistent Hawks games, right? So there's this narrative that he's this point of attack defender. He's not. Now, he might have used to be with the Spurs. Can he get back to that? We'll see. It probably depends on what load they put on them offensively. But yeah, he's not that player anymore. He's probably like an average to below average shooter, and he's a really good player. But in terms of, for that type of player, forget, what they gave up for him when they traded from the Spurs, because it's a different player now. You got to judge it in today's market. To get 2 first-round picks and a young player and a solid role player, I think that's a great deal. I think that's better than I thought they would do. And then from the Pelican side, I like it as well. They have some extra assets from that Anthony Davis trade still. They didn't have to give up Brandon Ingram. They didn't have to give up Herb Jones, which they were never going to do. Dyson Daniels is a nice player, but they have a lot of good players on their roster, and I think they're trying to, get closer to that contending right now because, they're in a different stage than the Hawks, and they have been rebuilding for a few years, right? And you got Zion, Brandon Ingram, C.J. McCollum, and now Dejonte. Now it's starting to look like a team. Like, could that be an interesting team in the West? We'll see. But for them, it's like you give up a Lakers pick that you've had from the Anthony Davis trade. You give up a future pick. You give up Dyson Daniels, who's kind of been sitting on your bench playing sparingly here or there, and then Larry Nance, who's just an expiring contract. So I like it from that side as well. Make a push for Dejounte, get that point guard in the building, which they haven't really had the past couple of years. Someone who can kind of set the table, and he might work really well with Zion or Brandon Ingram. But Ben, do you think this is the last move for the Pelicans? Do you think that they're going to get rid of Brandon Ingram? And how do you like this Pelicans team after this trading for Dejounte?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Pelicans must be going all in for right now. Keeping Brandon Ingram. Now, I don't think the Hawks wanted Brandon Ingram for a multitude of reasons, but I assume they'll hold on to him this season. I mean, that contract next year is going to be too much. They might just let him walk for nothing type. So I think they're clearly trying to win now. McCollum goes back to being a 2 like he was with Dame. I think Dejounte is a better defender as a 1 than he is at a 2. He just has better size for a 1. At a 2, he's already getting towards a little bit small. So I think it's a better fit for Dejounte, a better fit for CJ. Listen, they've got a bunch of names. Most of them don't stay healthy, and I'll kind of believe it when I see it. I don't see them as a contender for much of anything in the West. Maybe win a playoff series, but it seems like they're trying to win now.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that. And again, the West is loaded. So, the Mavs just made a move. I mean, Paul George went east, so that makes things a little bit easier. But, with Minnesota, OKC making moves left and right, they look like a potential juggernaut. Don't forget about Denver. It's just going to be a hard conference to really do something for them. But I don't mind them putting the chips in the middle of the table because, not everyone can just rebuild. They have talent there. They have real players there. It's like, let's make a move to see what this can be. And, I think it kind of also can show them who Zion really is. He's been in the league for a couple years now. He obviously had all the hype coming in. He's had his injuries here and there, right? But not here and there. He's had a lot of injuries. But now I think this gives the opportunity, kind of a complete roster, to see how valuable is Zion. Is he someone you want to build around moving forward, or maybe it's someone that they'll potentially look to trade? But I think that's for that trade. I think another big story that recently happened was the Paul George to the 76ers trade, or free agent signing, I should say. And this is a big splash for the 76ers. We talked about this in the previous episodes. Daryl Morey, his legacy was on the line this offseason in terms of someone who's been a good GM for a while, but hasn't been able to get over the top. And the Sixers had basically Embiid and Maxey under contract, and that's about it. They had no one else. They had a free, an open landscape, I guess you would call it. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but an open slate. And they had to make some moves, right? It was reported that maybe Paul George wasn't interested in the 76ers. And if Paul George doesn't go there, they're in trouble. Maybe they can get a DeMar DeRozan type of player, but this was kind of their last big shot after Klay signs with Dallas. I think it's a great move. And a lot of times with the big threes, they don't really think about the fit and how everything is going to come together. This, I think, the fit is really, really nice. You have Tyrese Maxey at the point, who's an ascending young player, and then obviously you have Embiid dominating the inside, and then you get that forward in the middle. It's rare to see the big three where you got the point guard, the forward, and the center. It kind of fits nicely together. Paul George is a really, really good shooter, underrated shooter, even for how good he is as a player. He's a sharp shooter, and I think it's going to, potentially put them over the top in the East. Obviously, the Knicks made some moves as well, getting Mikal Bridges, but it definitely takes them from that kind of we'll see what it is to they're right in that conversation with Milwaukee and New York and Boston. Ben, where do you see Philly in the East after this move? Do you see them as a legitimate contender to win the title?
No, that was my takeaway. What you just said in terms of fit, right? These 3 players fit together positionally. We'll see what Philadelphia is able to put around those guys. But it's the injuries in the playoffs it's going to be what it's going to be with Embiid. Um, to me, it's just three players that I don't really believe in any of them. Um, even at healthy Embiid, like I haven't seen him carry a team for games. I don't know. I just don't really believe in any of the three guys for as talented as they are. But they do fit really well together. They are very talented. I would say Eastern Conference Finals appearance as the ceiling for this team.
So let me ask you this: how would you rank these teams? Knicks, Boston, Milwaukee, Philly.
Boston number one, Knicks two. In theory, that's buying into Mikal Bridges. Now I've talked about offline. He's a little bit similar to Dejonte Murray. All right, we're just gonna say that. But I'm gonna put Knicks two because based off your word that Mikal Bridges is legit at the role they're trying to use him in. And then Philly three, Milwaukee four.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with you there. Again, it's just the Knicks already did it for a couple years, and they're kind of just adding the additional piece where it feels like Philly's kind of like remaking a whole team, and those usually don't work out, especially in the first year, right? In terms of winning a title. I do hear what you're saying in terms of you don't trust any of them individually, and they all have reasons for you not to believe in them. Outside of maybe Maxey, who's kind of young still and hasn't had much experience, right? But
Well,
in
that's
terms
why I
of
don't believe in
Embiid,
him because he just put up points on basically a little bit of a irrelevant team.
no, that's fair. I think last year in the playoffs he showed something, and we'll see going forward because you know in the NBA it turns into like in the beginning of your career it's like a cute story. It's like, oh, nice stats. We like this guy here. He did this. He did this. He had this moment, and then eventually it's like, okay, we got to win, right? So it's like, how good will Maxey be? Will he become? I know he made an All Star team this year. Will he be a perennial All Star player? Will he be an All NBA player? Or will he just be a guy who puts up good numbers, makes an All Star team here or there, but it's nothing really special? And in terms of Embiid, this he's there's no excuses now. You absolutely got to win. I'm tired of hearing the injuries every single playoffs. Every time he plays bad, he's injured, and then when he plays good, he's not. You got to step it up at a certain point. I just think his game is a lot easier to defend in the playoffs, almost in a similar way to Kevin Durant, even though they have very different play styles. But just that you like a lot of times they're getting the ball at the block. It's easy to double them. They're not necessarily the greatest passers out of that, although he's improved in that area. So I think it just makes him easier to defend. I think Paul George is definitely going to help. You basically upgraded from Tobias Harris to Paul George. That's a massive upgrade, no matter what you think of Paul George, right? So he's definitely going to help with their shooting. And the other thing is, like I was saying, even if you don't believe in them individually, I think as a unit, it looks much better just because the pressure is not on each one of these guys, right? Individually, you don't look at it as, oh, this guy's this guy's this pressure, right? If you kind of look at them as a collective, they can kind of take pressure off each other. They all bring a different skill set to the game. Obviously, Embiid's going to be their best player. I think Maxey's going to be their second best player, but it might be Paul George. But I don't think there's going to be like a hierarchy issue where, this guy's trying to take 20 shots a game and no one else can get involved, right? So I think it's going to be a really good fit. But I probably agree with you that they're probably third behind New York just because New York doesn't have to make that many changes. New York was the 2 seed last year, added Mikal Bridges, who's a really good piece for them, and hopefully he'll get healthier. I mean, you got to remember last year they almost made the conference finals, and they were missing Randall for the playoffs, which might be a positive. But they were also missing, they had all these type of injuries. Anunoby got injured. This guy got injured, right? So now hopefully they get healthy Anunoby, healthy Mikal Bridges. They lose Hartenstein, which is a big loss, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I think New York will definitely be better this year, and I would trust them as number two. And I would definitely have them over Milwaukee. I don't really trust Milwaukee. I think Giannis might have gotten as close to, obviously he won the title, and then after that he hasn't really gotten close since. He hasn't made it past round two. And I just don't believe in them as a team. I don't really believe in Dame. I think he's on the decline. I don't believe in Giannis's impact in terms of playoff winning. I've just seen it too many times. I know he had the title year when everybody got hurt. But if you look at before and after that, he just hasn't had playoff success since. He hasn't. Now, they make excuses every year. This happened, injury, he faced this team, he couldn't beat this team, whatever it is. But he just hasn't gotten done outside of that one year. So there's no reason for me to believe it's going to happen this year with a declining Dame, who I think is only going to get worse. But I think that's it for the Paul George signing. Um, I would say the next biggest move is Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, this one's kind of a shocker. Um, obviously the past couple of days they were reporting that he's going to go to the Lakers or maybe go to Dallas, but just to like see him sign somewhere. Obviously there's rumors, but there's rumors everywhere in the NBA offseason, right? People are throwing reports out, trying to misdirect. different, Shams, Woj, throwing stuff out there. But to actually see Klay Thompson sign with a different team than the Golden State Warriors, it was a little crazy to me. Obviously he's been in Golden State his whole career. He had the 4 titles. Steph is still there. Draymond is still there. So it's not like the nucleus is broken up. They just decided it was time to move on from Klay. It was reported actually that the Lakers offered more money than Dallas. That the Lakers, I think, offered 4 for 80, and I think Dallas offered 3 for 50. So I guess he didn't want to go to the Lakers. Maybe he had a strong inclination that he wanted to be with Dallas. But from the Lakers' perspective, they just keep missing out on free agents. It feels like every time it's like the Lakers are reported to be interested in this person, and then they sign with someone else and they go to the next person. So now it's like, oh, they're going to sign DeMar DeRozan. So we'll see how that goes. I think Klay Thompson would have been a great fit with the Lakers. Someone who can score the basketball, who they desperately need. Someone who can spread the floor for LeBron and Anthony Davis. He can shoot the ball. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He's not one of these guys who's dribbling the air out of the basketball. So I think it would have been a perfect fit with LeBron and AD. LeBron could have got him some open looks. And, I bet, Ben will get to this later. He can still shoot the 3 ball. I mean, I think he shot 38% last year from 3. So he's not the player he used to be. Obviously, he had the ACL, he had the Achilles. So you can't expect him to be the same player, and he's getting up there in age. But one thing he's going to be able to do until he's 45 years old is shoot the basketball, right? So I think it's a perfect fit for Kyrie and Luka because, we were talking about what's the perfect star to put next to those guys. And this is the type of player you want, right? Someone who doesn't need the ball in his hands, right? He can just shoot the basketball, and Luka and Kyrie can take turns, bring the ball up, dribbling the air out of the basketball as they tend to do. And Klay Thompson will be happy to sit in the corner as long as he's getting some looks and knock down some threes. And I think they desperately needed that in the playoffs. Even as far as they made it, that was with PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. going out of their minds from 3. Those guys are not 3-point shooters by nature, but they were just hitting them in the first couple rounds. And then you saw them get to Boston, and those guys aren't hitting shots, and you look around, it's like, well, who's the good shooters? Derrick Jones, PJ Washington. These guys aren't shooters, right? So to add a Klay Thompson, I think it adds another dynamic, and not only from his scoring, but just his ability to stretch the floor in terms of players are going to have to guard him, and it's going to open up more space for Kyrie and Luka. And I was kind of fishy on, are the Mavs just a one-hit wonder going into next season? But I think this, when teams are complacent, that's when it kind of gets scary, and they start slipping down in terms of where they are as a contender. But I think you need a move like this to show we're not complacent. We're keeping pushing, and I think it puts them right back in the contender category, along with Denver, along with Minnesota, along with OKC. If you made me pick a team right now, I would probably pick OKC as a favorite, just because their additions, which we'll get into a little bit. But Ben, how would you rank the top 4 teams in the Western Conference?
Top 4 teams in the West. Who came out of the West? Oh, Denver. Um,
Denver, OKC, Minnesota, and then rank those 3 teams. What about the top 3 teams in the West?
Denver, OKC, Dallas, Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, listen, I like this move for. I mean, I just don't take Minnesota seriously. Like the players on that team, unless Anthony Edwards is gonna turn into a much more consistent player, which he might, and he has all the talent to do. I hope that happens. But the rest of that team, besides for him, I just don't take seriously. But I mean, I agree with you. I think this is a great move for Dallas. It solves kind of one of their problems, but not their other problem. One of their problems was outside of Luke and Kyrie, there was no self-creation on the team. So this, I don't think, does much for that at this point in Klay's career. But in terms of if we're just going to have Luke and Kyrie do all the self-creation and just have shooters in the corner, this is a major upgrade from the shooting they went into the playoffs with this year. Besides first the talent of shooter that Klay is, he's also got all the experience in the world. So when he's standing out in the corner, it's going to spread a team like Boston out a lot more. So even if they're going to come back with the same strategy, Klay's going to be a big upgrade in the corner. I assume Luka's going to be in a bit better shape. So I think Dallas' offense next playoffs is going to be a lot more effective, even if they do the same thing. Question is on the defensive end. I don't know if Klay Thompson's currently a traffic cone at this point, or if he's just average. But I think this is a great move for Dallas.
Yeah, in terms of the perimeter defense, I think he'll be motivated. I think we're going to see a motivated Klay, someone who's angry at Golden State for letting him go. A lot of the reports of why he left is not necessarily the money, but like the disrespect that he felt from Golden State in terms of the contracts they were offering him. And I saw a report today that he told Steph, like, obviously Steph can, they're going to listen to whatever Steph says, but he told Steph, don't like use your power to make them keep me, basically. Like, if I want them to keep me on their own. If they don't want to keep me, so I'll go. You know, he kind of, I think that the respect that he felt, and I think it started when they, obviously with the Jordan Poole punch is kind of the beginning of the end of Golden State. But I think the contract situation is what really ended it. You gave Jordan Poole a massive contract, obviously, then you shipped him off. You give Draymond a big contract. Steph obviously gets a big contract. And Klay's kind of sitting there like, where's my contract, right? I've been here for 4 years. I've been here for all the titles. I'm game six Klay, right? I said in 2016, I'm the reason we even made the finals that year. And, I'm probably the second or third biggest reason for this dynasty. And you're not offering me a contract, right? So I think he kind of felt disrespected. And that's where it kind of came in where he wanted to look elsewhere. But again, I don't think money was the biggest factor necessarily for Klay because I think the Lakers offered him more money. And even though I think his dad's the announcer there, or he definitely used to play there, so I was kind of shocked that he didn't choose the Lakers over Dallas. But maybe Luka had a good sales pitch. He wanted to play with Luka and Kyrie. He saw they were just in the finals. The thing about Dallas compared to the Lakers is they're a better team. They're closer to contention. So if Klay, wants to get revenge in terms of I want to win a championship with another team to show you how valuable I am, I think Dallas, maybe that's the reason he chose Dallas, just his best shot to win a title from the teams that were interested. I'm not sure if Philly made him an offer or not. It sounded like they were more interested in Paul George. But just to see Klay Thompson in a different jersey is going to be shocking. And then Golden State, where do they go from here? I'm not really sure. It's not like they have cap space. It seems like they want to get under the cap. You have Steph and Draymond, obviously, and Kuminga. You have some young players. I think if I'm them, my number one move is to go and try to get Lowry Markkinen. It was reported they tried to get Paul George. I think they offered Kuminga first, Chris Paul, some other players maybe, and they just. I don't think the Clippers were ever going to trade him to Golden State just because they're within the conference and there's somewhat of a rivalry there. That they're not going to get Paul George, right? And see him dominating Golden State, and all of a sudden Steph wins a title with Paul George, and then the Clippers look really bad. So they'd rather ship him off east, where they don't really have to worry about that. But yeah, I would cobble together my assets and try to get Lowry Markkinen. Outside of that, I'm not really too interested in some of these players, and if that doesn't work out, I'm talking to Steph and say, can we take a year off maybe, where we're going to be worse, just to clear up some cap space, maybe ship off Draymond, get some value for him, and then going into next year, have some good assets, maybe have a good first round pick, have what we got for Draymond, Kuminga, Moody, give them another year to develop, and just like see where it goes from there. Because they're not going to ship off Steph. Steph is the Golden State Warriors. He is their franchise. So the question is, what's the best way to get to contention? Because they're not there right now, right? So do we blow it up, get rid of Draymond, um, and just start from scratch with Steph and try to build it that way, or do you kind of keep the core as it is now and just kind of add pieces? Ben, if you're Golden State, what would you do? Would you fully rip the Band-Aid off, rebuild, get rid of Draymond, start over, or would you try to make another big move, potentially trade for a Lowry Markkinen type of player? Before you go, I just want to throw in there's another report that the Bulls offered Zach LaVine for Andrew Wiggins, I think it was, or Andrew Wiggins and Chris Paul, and Golden State said no. I guess because they didn't want to take on that contract, because Zach LaVine would be a clear upgrade over Andrew Wiggins. So I thought that was interesting that they said no to that, because that kind of showed me maybe they care about the cap a little more than we think, and they're kind of trying to get under that tax. But Ben, what are you doing if you are Golden State? What's the route you're taking from here?
If I'm Golden State, I'm going all in as fast as possible for this season, and maybe next, because I think Steph Curry is coming to the end of the road here in terms of really being able to impact a championship level team, just in terms of the consistency he's gonna be able to put up. I don't think this is not a 3-4 year run anymore. I think this is a year or two until he's at the point where he's a good player, but he's a LeBron type of player or worse, where it's like, yeah, you see the flashes, but this is not gonna get us to a championship. So whatever it takes to get Laurie Markkinen, get that guy, him, Draymond, Steph, and then, you got Andrew Wiggins and Pajemski, and, hopefully those guys can do what they can do, trade deadline, pick somebody up, but I think their window is a year or two. And the reason I don't blow it up is because they're not trading Steph, who's the real value if you wanted to try to get 6 first round picks or whatever to start a rebuild. I just don't think they have the assets to, like, they don't have a bunch of stockpiled assets to kickstart a rebuild. So I may as well just take the 2 years, do what we can, and if because of that, when they do a rebuild, it takes an extra year or whatever because of that, I think that's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, Mikal Bridges is worth 5 first-round picks. What's Steph Curry worth? That's the question. I think
Yeah, but
probably
they're
the
not trading
smart.
him though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're not going to trade him.
And
If you're coming from a first,
they're
go
not,
ahead.
and whoever they get in these draft picks in this rebuild is not going to be Steph Curry. Draymond Green probably even is not coming out of a draft. I mean, this is the best they're ever going to have it, even at their older ages. Like, I would just go do whatever you can to see if you can get one more, even a finals appearance. I mean, I would take what you can get out of what you have.
Yeah, I was going to say if you come from a pure basketball perspective, like no emotions, I'm trading Steph. That's what I'm doing. But they're not going to do that, right? They just
And
won't
if
do it.
I'm,
He
by
means
the
too
way,
much to
if
the
I'm
franchise.
Steph, I want to get traded too. Like, I don't think that's what I would do if I'm Golden State. I don't think even if they go all in, they get Laurie. I don't think they're legitimate contenders even still. So if I'm Steph, I want to win. If I'm Golden State, I want to set up. Like, it's almost a win-win, but neither of them want to do it.
Yeah, it's just they mean too much to each other. That's the interesting thing is Steph going to be pissed now that they traded Klay. And I know it's like, oh, Steph will never ask for a trade, but all of a sudden, like, you just traded my best friend, right? You traded the guy I've been with my whole career, and it's like, do I still want to be here? It doesn't feel the same. Things like that. Those are things you have to worry about because I don't know if Steph's like just going to accept I'm going to be on trash teams for the rest of my career. I think he's too competitive of a player. So if he sees that they're not interested in contending, I think he could come to the point where he asks for a trade. Especially, I think this opens the door for that trading Klay, where you already see it's not the same. So like, why am I still here? Um, but we'll
Yeah, I mean,
see.
this has
Maybe
been.
he just wants to ride out in Golden State. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, this is Nick Wright's been on this where it's like Steph is at a point where he needs to pick between if he wants to win or if he wants to finish on Golden State. Because he's not winning with Golden State. Maybe
Yeah,
if they get Laurie Markkinen, maybe, but they're gonna have to trade. I mean, what are they gonna have to trade away to do that? Um, Most likely, he has to pick between which one's more important to him, and it doesn't feel the same. Like, the franchise is the franchise, but you know, it doesn't feel the same. I don't think, at least on the outside looking in, it doesn't look like it's the same. Vibe. So it's gonna be interesting to see what Steph prioritizes.
yeah, 100%. That's gonna be the decision he has to make for the rest of his career. But I think that's that on the Klay trade. The other team I wanted to get into is the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that was the 1 seed in the Western Conference last year. They made it to the second round. They had a competitive series with Dallas, and PJ Washington just turned into Steph Curry, and they lost that series. They didn't really have the players step up next to Shea, with Jalen Williams kind of having a mediocre playoffs. That's being kind. And they made some moves this offseason. They didn't stay complacent. That's what I wanted to see, right? I didn't want them to see like, oh, we have young players. We'll just keep growing and we'll see what happens. Like, no, your window is now. You're the 1 seed in the Western Conference. You're a legitimate contender. And they made a couple moves that I think could put them over the top into that Boston category. Like, for me, they're a clear favorite going forward with the Caruso trade without having to give up anything. Josh Giddey, who wasn't getting any minutes in the playoffs, that was a steal. And now they go get Isaiah Hartenstein, and they overpaid him. They tremendously overpaid him, but I think it was worth the team that makes sense to overpay him is OKC, right? They gave him 3 for 87. When I saw that contract, I fell out of my chair. $29 million for Isaiah Hartenstein. That's a nice player, right? He's a solid player. He's good for the Knicks last year. Very good defensively, rebounder, things like that. But that was a crazy overpay. I don't think anyone else was coming near that number. Obviously, the cap is going to go up and things like that. But I think that was the player that Oklahoma City needed. That was the perfect archetype that they were looking for. People criticized them. Why didn't they go after Daniel Gafford in last year's trade deadline? And now looking at this move, it's like, all right, now I understand. This is a real player who's better than Gafford. He's a really young, someone who's going to improve, and he's that center position. When they face bigger teams in the playoffs, the regular season, they were just getting dominated on the boards. Chet's their center. He's too skinny at this point in his career. At some point he'll put on muscle maybe, but I think this is nice. You put Chet at the 4, kind of that stretch 4, Hartenstein at the 5. And then if you want to go small, you put Chet at the 5, Hartenstein on the bench, and you have both options. It creates a lot of flexibility. And then with adding Caruso, I think it's going to improve their defense a lot, particularly their perimeter defense. Do you have OKC as a clear number one contender, Ben, or do you have someone above them? And how much do you think they've improved this offseason with the Caruso trade and then the Hartenstein signing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have them over Boston. But in the West, probably have them as the favorite in the West. I mean, I love Denver, but I mean, they just have no depth, and they lost more. They lost KCP. Like, they're in a as much as I love them, they have no depth, and that's probably not going to work. I guess I have them made as a favorite in the West. Love these two moves. We talked about this going into the offseason, or at least I think we got it in at some point. I don't remember if we ended up talking about it on air, but that they needed the center. This is a great fit in terms of he does all the center stuff, plus he's more skilled than a lot of centers. They paid a lot for it. I don't know the timing in terms of when their young players are going to start to get contracts and if this is going to be off the books by then. I don't know those types of details. He did get paid a lot of money, but like Clint Capella gets $18 million, and so he gets 28. So it's like he's definitely worth more than 18, somewhere between 18 and 28. So he got overpaid, but not crazy. Fits perfect, right? They can go big now, right? They were always able to go small with Chet at the 5. Now they can go big. Chet can shoot, so he can really play the floor, unlike a certain prospect. And yeah, Cruz was great on the defensive end. So their defense is going to be a lot better, but they're going to have the same issue as last season in the playoffs, where if Jalen Williams doesn't step up, they have one creator in Shea. So this doesn't really solve that problem. Maybe they can kind of solve it in the aggregate just by having everybody else ball movement and shooting and cutting and maybe that will work. But this doesn't directly help their offensive issues they had last year. But I love OKC for the improvements they made and the experience of losing a playoff series against a legitimate team in the Mavericks. Those two things combined, make me excited about OKC.
Yeah, that's a great point because that was a big struggle in the playoffs is that secondary creator that they didn't really have, and Jalen Williams kind of shrunk in the playoffs. Now, it could be because of Caruso kind of takes some pressure off Jalen Williams defensively that he doesn't have to guard the best player every single minute of the game, that maybe that'll help him offensively and just getting more possessions because your rebounding is going to be better. That could help them. But yeah, that is a good point that they're definitely going to need Jalen Williams to step up. I think Shea could even take another leap to that like perennial top 3 player. Well, I think he's knocking on the door of that. He's definitely in that conversation. But I think he has another leap in him. Maybe he can start shooting the 3 ball a little bit better.
Right,
And
Shea
I mean,
never carried them in any games in the playoffs, right? We talked about this where you brought this up, where he was consistent as like an A- performer every playoff game, but if he can carry them to a couple wins, that would probably be the step up I see for Shea.
yeah, 100%. And like Ben said, with the Denver Nuggets getting worse, losing KCP, it just feels like their window. These windows in the NBA are a lot smaller than you think. And losing KCP, losing Bruce Brown, last year for Denver, it kind of seems like, and maybe this window wasn't as long as we thought. Maybe Denver's not going to win 15 titles in a row like everyone predicted, as everyone does when anybody team wins a title. I think Denver's in a scary spot, and I think they could be out of contention really, really quickly, even with Nikola Jokic, because we saw them with Nikola Jokic without Jamal Murray. They're losing the first round in 5 games, right? So that is what it is. So we'll see, how far Jokic can carry them, and if Jamal Murray can kind of rekindle that magic. But I wanted to finish up this podcast here with a couple of contract extension talks, and the main one being Donovan Mitchell. Now, this was an interesting one because it was reported throughout the season pretty much from every outlet that Donovan Mitchell's gone after the year, right? Either they could trade him at the trade deadline or he's walking away. And, I kind of believed it just because he's in Cleveland. He didn't choose to be there. He was traded there, right? It's not like he signed there. And he wanted to be in New York or he wanted to be in Brooklyn. I wonder if Mikal Bridges to New York kind of sealed this for him in terms of like he realized, okay, I'm not going to be a New York Knick, and if it's not that, he's looking around like, do I want to go to Brooklyn and win what? And like, do I want to go here? Like, there wasn't really anywhere to go. And then he's like, okay, fine, I'll sign with Cleveland. It might have been that type of situation. He had some good playoff moments last year. He was disappointing in some games. I don't see Cleveland winning anything in the near future, but I was surprised that he signed a multi-year extension with Cleveland and did not ask for a trade. I guess the other interesting spot would have been Miami. Ben, are you surprised that Donovan Mitchell signed this extension? And did he make a mistake? Should he have moved to a team that's more closer to contend?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this whole story was kind of off my radar just because, like you briefly mentioned, is like I just don't take the Cavs at any level of seriousness in terms of, even getting to finals. So I kind of forgot about it. I think that's a really interesting point where, he kind of got the coach fired. The coach might have been getting fired anyways, but he definitely had an impact on that. People knew he did not like the coach, and the Cavs wanted to try to retain him. And he was kind of looking around and being like, where am I going to go? And so he's like, okay, they fired the coach. There's not really anywhere else to go. This is a talented team. So he ended up staying. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't take the Cavs seriously, even with Donovan Mitchell. And yeah, so it kind of is what it is. He gets the max contract a little bit on the shorter side. I forget if it was a 3-year with the 4th-year player option or 2-year with the 3rd-year player option.
I think it was 3 years total. I'm pretty sure it was
3
3
years
years
total, including the player option.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's
I
not there
think
for a
so.
long
We can
time.
confirm that.
I would expect he gets traded before the end of this. So I guess next offseason. And then the last thing I'll throw in here while we have got on the topic of Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young is better than Donovan Mitchell. Okay.
I think I agree with that take, honestly. But, for some people underrate Trae Young, and Donovan Mitchell's flashier, so, it is what it is. Is he flashier? I don't even know. But that's a side point.
Okay.
The other thing is, what Donovan Mitchell can't do now is, like, I want to win. I always wanted to win a title. Like, this is the Bradley Beal thing when he was with the Wizards, where he signed a 5-year max contract with Washington, and then he's like, I want to win. How come how come the team won't do anything to help me win? It's like, brother, you signed a 5-year contract with Washington, okay? Damian Lillard did this with Portland, where he signed extension after extension with Portland, and then he's like, well, I want to win. It's like, no, you don't. You signed with Portland, man, right? So it's the same thing with Donovan Mitchell here, where it's like, you signed with Cleveland. You're not winning the title, right? You might win a playoff series here or there. You might have a good moment here or there, but you're signing up for, I am not winning a title. I would rather get paid, right? That's what you chose. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily, right? If I'm an NBA player, am I going to want to get as much money as I can? Yes. But you're saying I do not care about winning a title, or at least I prioritize money over that. And I don't want to hear in 3 years, well, Cleveland never got Donovan Mitchell the help he needed. Like, no, you could. This was your opportunity to leave Cleveland. Maybe not this year, if you could force your way out, or next year, whatever it is. But what are your thoughts on that, just in general? Like, players signing those fat contracts and then be like, well, I want to win. It's like, well, you sign with a team that isn't that in that spot in a contending situation.
Well, the Bradley Beal one was legendary. The Bradley Beal one was legendary because of just how, like, you know,
He got both worlds. He signed
right.
the contract, then
He
asked for
got
the
both
trade.
roles, but it was so obvious what he did. But what player have we ever seen leave on a discount to? I've never seen a player take a discount to win. Very small
Durant.
discounts, and with very.
Durant
What did Durant take?
in Golden State, he took a discount.
Like how much?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was a
And
discount.
that's
It
the
was a
other
real
thing.
discount.
We've seen it with LeBron, like, and the Heat. Like, we've seen players take
Harden took a
20%
discount.
25% discount for when they know they have a very, very good opportunity to win. Kevin Durant, Golden State, the big three Heat. Like, that's when you've got, like, okay, we will probably win if I take a discount, then you'll take, like, 20% off. Other than that, you don't really see players take discounts. I don't really. And, like, this is a reasonable situation. It's not Washington. Like you're saying, where do you want him to go? Unless he's going to take a huge discount. Like, which team is available for him to go? Let's say he would take a discount and play for $30 million a year. What team should he have gone to?
Well, I threw out Miami as an interesting one. The other interesting one, I
Is
think,
that
was
a better chance for
Orlando.
him to win, actually?
I think
Probably.
so. Well,
A
Jimmy
bit.
Butler's leaving in a year, so maybe not. But Orlando definitely would be a better shot to win than in Cleveland with
I mean, in
Paolo.
theory, but we've seen nothing from them in the playoffs. But yeah, I guess in theory, maybe.
I mean, they just took them to Game 7, and you flip teams with him. But while we're on this topic, by the way, on the topic of discounts, I would throw out this LeBron thing. There was this rumor that LeBron will take a discount if the Lakers sign a real player, and it was like Paul George or Klay Thompson, and then they threw in Jonas Valanciunas. I will bet all my money LeBron James will not take a discount for Jonas Valanciunas. Okay, can we stop? That was the biggest BS report I ever heard in my life. Maybe Klay Thompson. He'll be like, all right, I'll take $5 million off to sign Klay Thompson. Jonas Valanciunas, give me a break. And, by the way, this is like peak LeBron to like throw out that you'll take a contract a discount and then like not actually take it and be like, oh well, he wanted to, they just couldn't get anyone. So it kind of is what it is. The Lakers need to get somebody. I'm sorry if they are. I mean, as if you're rooting for the Hawks now, that the Hawks have their pick. They obviously want them to lose, but they need to add someone. The only guy left is DeMar DeRozan. Outside of that, it's just like, all right, a bunch of role players, scrubs, Jonas Valanciunas, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess we could finish on that, Ben. What the Lakers? What are you doing? There's not really anyone else in the free agency that excites me. Technically, LeBron's still a free agent, by the way. That would be hilarious if they drafted Bronny and LeBron's just like, I'm out. LeBron handpicks the head coach, drafts Bronny, and it's like, I'm out. That would be a hilarious move. But I don't see it happening. Although Philly has an open spot. But if you're the Lakers, Are you interested in DeMar DeRozan, or is there any other free agents or trades? I guess Lowry. It's reported they're interested in Lowry. I don't think they have the picks. What do they have? I think they have 3 picks available. So if they offered the Jazz 3 picks on top of maybe Austin Reeves, does that interest them? Maybe that's not a terrible package. I've heard of worse packages, but it's not like they haven't been trying. They offered Klay reportedly more money than Dallas did. So like, what do you want them to do? Maybe Klay Thompson looked at JG Redick as the head coach and was like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." That might have been a factor no one's talking about. But seriously, if you're a free agent and you're looking at the coach like it's JJ Redick, how do you take that guy seriously, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a factor. But if you're the Lakers, do you go after marketing? Do you go after DeMar DeRozan? Do you just kind of chill? Do you blow it up? What are you doing if you're Los Angeles?
I mean, Los Angeles to me feels like the Pelicans, where it's like just kind of a bunch of guys. Like the Pelicans have, they're 1 through 5, right? The Pelicans, 2 through 5 are better than Lakers 2 through 5, but I think Anthony Davis is a monster. But I kind of just view them as similar, like not exactly fitting together. They're just like guys, like talented. Some of them talented. They're like they don't feel like they have a identity.
There's no cohesion.
There's no cohesion. So I mean, if I'm the Lakers, I would blow this up as fast as possible. It's not happening. I love Anthony Davis as a player. I think he would get a haul. But I mean, kind of just the Lakers are going to go with the Lakers. Yeah, LeBron, I'm going to take a discount for Jonas Valanciunas. Like, listen, the LeBron thing is like I am very big on because we like the guy's personality or demeanor. I'm not making him a better player in my rankings. The big example is Tom Brady, but so I have to do that. I have to make sure to be careful with LeBron, where because he is exhausting. I hate LeBron's attitude off the court and his whole mindset and his PR and like to me it's just exhausting and I hate it. But when we have basketball conversations, I have to make sure not to factor that in, in the opposite way because I just don't think that should be part of the calculus. Yeah, and then back to the Lakers have 3 picks. It's like the Lakers keep trying to like get these trades like offer like the bare minimum deal that would like in theory be acceptable if there was no other deals on the table and the team had to trade a player in the next 2 days. And then obviously they don't get him because their package sucks. Like they have no assets. Austin Reeves is not an asset, bro. They're acting like this guy's a multi-time All-Star. Like, oh, that's the asset, right? The Lakers are they're just like all over the place.
I mean, yeah, Austin Reeves definitely overrated, as every Lakers player is. I remember when they were trying
No,
to hype up
he's
Taylor
overrated
Horton
by the
Tucker.
Lakers. I don't think anybody else
Yeah,
has him overrated.
yeah, by the Lakers and their fans. I mean, I legit remember they were hyping up Taylor Horton Tucker. I'm like, this guy is garbage. And then he went to the Jazz, and nobody heard of him again because he's garbage. Because that's the Lakers. When you're the Lakers, everyone hypes you up more. But it's almost similar to Golden State, where if I'm coming from a neutral perspective, there's no emotions, there's no feelings, there's no legacies. I'm trading Anthony Davis. That's the first thing I'm doing. And I'm getting my 6 first-round picks, whatever it is, players, whatever it is, right? Then LeBron's going to ask out. I'm trading him, getting a couple first-round picks, whatever it is, right? Then, and you have on top of your 3 that you already have, maybe you can get a first-round pick or 2 for Austin Reeves. And I'm starting from scratch, right? And obviously this is Los Angeles, so they're not going to do that. But even from a Los Angeles perspective, it's like, okay, if you clear the deck, you have nothing on the books, right? You just have 10, 11 picks and like maybe you get some star players here or there. That's interesting. But now that I'm thinking about it, the Hawks own their pick, so it's kind of like the Hawks are going to tank. It's like, well, the Spurs have their pick, so they're not going to tank. So with them not owning their 2025 pick, they're definitely going to go all in. So we'll see if they can cobble together, a DeMar DeRozan or a Jonas Valanciunas that LeBron will allegedly take a discount for.
What's
But
it
yeah,
called? When LA picked their own draft picks, like before the LeBron thing, their good players are spread throughout the league now, with Ball and Ingram, Caruso,
Randall, Josh Hart.
Randall, Josh Hart. Like those are a lot of good players they got in the draft.
Yeah, they definitely hit some. They hit on some picks, and then it's kind of like they traded them all for Anthony Davis, and now they're getting mediocre picks. And I think the draft pick this year is going to be really good, right? You like Dalton Connect, especially at
Dalton
17.
Knecht. Yeah, I mean that's a great pick that's a great fit for them. I see the
It's a great
Lakers as a
fit, but it was
playoff team
also.
this season. At least
You see it? You
AC.
do see them? You see them as a playoff team?
I see them as being no worse than they were this year. Now, obviously, LeBron and AD can get injured at any point, but assuming health, I think they're a better team than they were last year.
I'll make my prediction right now. The Lakers are not making the playoffs. They're not making the playoffs. Last year, LeBron AD stayed healthy the whole year, no major injuries, and they were like the 8th seed, squeaking by in the last few games, right? This year, their coach is worse. I don't care what you thought about Darvin Ham. That guy was an NBA head coach. JJ Redick is not, right? If you place Darvin Ham, there's some people who think if you place Darvin Ham with a literal ham, then it'll be better. But, outside of those people, I
Harry,
don't
you
think their
don't
coaching
think
is going to be
LeBron is a
better.
good head coach?
Yeah, well, assistant head coach JJ Redick. I think LeBron's getting a year older. I think it's unlikely that LeBron and AD stay healthy another year. They haven't improved. The West has gotten better. I just don't see it. I think they're gonna miss the playoffs. We'll see how it goes. But was there anything else you wanted to add, just in general, before we wrap this up?
I think that covers it. I think that covers it.
All right, I think that covers it. I guess I'll throw in the KCP to Orlando is interesting. I don't think it's a game-changing move, but they needed some offense. Again, Donovan Mitchell should have requested to Orlando. They were a reported Paul George team. So, do you buy Orlando as anything? Are they making the second round this year? Or
Depends who they play. I mean, that's pretty much the max, getting swept out of the second round or whatever, 5-game sweep.
yeah, long term, they're going to be as good as Paulo is. If Paulo turns into that top 10 guy, maybe they could be something. If not, they'll just be one of these feisty Cleveland Cavaliers esque teams. But let's wrap it up with that. Another good episode in the books. Don't forget to follow us on social media, on our YouTube, at the Agendas Pod. We made a new TikTok, Agendas Pod, so check that out. We're going to put some new content on there. And yeah, catch you guys on the next one.